Antics, welcome back to my channel. I have a sewing DIY for you today in the form of repurposing your old clothes to fit children. So I had a dress that I absolutely loved, but unfortunately the zip bust and I didn't really want to tackle having to place in a new zip. So I thought I would repurpose this for my 5-year-old niece by turning my dress into a skirt for her to wear. So I thought I would do a bit of a sew along and show you how I did that. So if it's something you would like to do in the future and want to pick up a few tips, then let's get crafting. So here is what my dress looked like before I repurposed it into the skirt. The first thing I did in altering the dress into a skirt was cut up the back seam. As you can see here, it is already a seam that was in with the dress, so I might as well follow that pattern. What you are looking to have in this project is a long piece of material that you can change into the skirt. The back seam led up to the zip, which was on the back of the skirt and just before the waistband, so I was cutting up just to get to the waistband part. Then I decided to cut the waistband off of the dress to give the bottom half of the dress the skirt shape. So essentially it was already the skirt of the dress that I am just changing into a smaller skirt. Parts of the skirt was pleated into the waistband, which meant once I cut it off and pulled it out that I had extra material than I first realised when starting, so this gave me a little bit of leeway in measuring out for the skirt for my niece. I then repeated the process with the lining of the dress because the material for the skirt is quite thin and would probably go see-through, so this just gives it a bit more body. I gave the new skirt piece a quick iron to make sure all the creases and wrinkles were out of the material so that I could measure properly and sew it together. I did the same with the lining as well. To get the correct size for the skirt, I measured my niece's waist and then times this by 2, and this gave me the width of the skirt. I also made sure that the length of this was the right height between her hip and knees. I placed the skirt and lining together, making sure the wrong side of the skirt was facing up and the right side of the lining was facing down. Then jumping onto the sewing machine, connecting the two ends together to make a back seam or side seam wherever this part is going to sit on the skirt. So essentially you're joining the two edges of the skirt and lining together to make your skirt. As you can see, the seam has lined up quite well and the print of the material sort of matches, which I'm quite happy with here. I then jumped back onto the sewing machine and overlocked or zigzagged the newly formed seam. This just offers some protection of it unravelling, which hopefully it won't do. Then it was time to create the channel for the elastic around the waistband, so I folded this over slightly and folded it back on itself, checking against the width of the elastic to make sure that it wasn't too small or too big. You don't want the elastic getting lost in the channel. Before sewing, I left a gap in the channel. This is where I could thread through the elastic. So I backstitched on each side of that opening and then did a straight stitch all the way around to form the waistband elastic channel. Then it was time to thread through the elastic waistband into the newly made channel. So I used a safety pin in the end of the elastic just to hold it in place and have something to grab onto whilst threading it through. The measurement for the elastic was my niece's waist plus about 2 centimetres, so that you have a bit of an overlap at the end to sew together. It just gives the elastic a little bit of give and it can make it a bit more extendable that way. Threading the elastic through does take a bit of time to do, and you need to make sure that it doesn't twist once in the channel. So I marked the end of mine so I could see which end was coming out, or which side should I say was coming out at the opening. So you just push it through and then gather some of the material, stretch it back out and push it through again to make sure you reach round to the end. Once both sides of the elastic were fully through, I sewed the two ends together and then popped them back inside before closing up the opening of the channel. So when it was fully closed, I just moved the elastic around to make sure all the gathers in the waistband were more equal. Luckily, the skirt was already hemmed because it was the bottom part of the dress. However, the lining was too long. I think I got my measurements slightly wrong here, and it was hanging down below. So I had to head back to the drawing board, unpick the side seam a little bit and trim down the lining. So before re-hemming the lining, I just checked that it was the right size and wasn't hanging down anymore. Then I did a simple zigzag stitch along the edge just to secure any of the loose threads and stop it from fraying, as well as keeping it lying flat, as opposed to doing a rolled hem which could have puckered the bottom of the skirt. I then sewed up the side seam again. I made a last minute change to the skirt by using the existing waist straps of the dress to create a tie at the back of the skirt. This was just in case the skirt didn't fit my niece, as she wouldn't let me fully measure her waist properly, and so we could tighten it if it was a bit too big. As the straps were already made for part of the dress, I didn't need to do any additional sewing for these, but I did need to unpick two of the seams that were at the back of the skirt, which were already existing on the material when I sewed it together to make the little skirt, if that makes sense. I popped the two straps inside and sewed the seams back together, making sure the straps were as equal to each other as possible. And then my repurpose of my dress into a skirt was complete. So there you have how to repurpose a dress into something new and wearable for yourself or for somebody else. I chose my 5-year-old niece because I am a proud auntie, and because I can do sewing, why not make her something from something I have had. It wasn't always easy. She wouldn't let me measure her waist, which did make it a little bit more of guesswork, and she also wouldn't properly try it on. So I think it fit, but I'm not sure, so that's why I added the extra ribbons at the end so we could tighten if it didn't fit her. Now, I don't know if it was my measurements with the elastic or the elastic that I used, but this could be quite a universal skirt because it did fit me slightly snugly, but it wasn't too tight, so I could actually wear this as a skirt as well. So yes, just make sure you check all your measurements if you are planning on making something like this. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to keep up with more of my crafting and travel antics. Until next time, bye!